put it in the comment section or the conversation section, and yeah, let also the floor to the others, and do not talk maybe too much. If ever, yeah, we appreciate that. My God. So before we start, so I'm just going to introduce our two speakers. So the first one, which is Marcus Steen. Sorry, I'm having a little issues today with my computer, and so yeah, I will so introduce our two speakers. The first one, so which is Marcus Steen. So Marcus Steen works as a senior research scientist at TNO, a leading research and technology organization in the Netherlands. He earned a master's degree, a PhD, and a PhD. Degrees in industrial design engineering at Delft University of Technology. He's an expert in participatory design and responsible innovation. So his mission is to promote the design and application of technologies in ways that help and to create a just society in which people can live well together and flourish. For example, by creating conditions in which ordinary people can participate in the development and deployment of actively and creatively. And so thank you, Mark, for joining us. So Mark was across the all for web conference, since he is one of the mastermind of the toolbox that he will talk to you so later about. And the second speaker for this web conference, that will be Bruno Oliveira Martin. So Bruno is a research senior researcher at the Peace Research Institute Oslo, PRIO, and associate researcher at the Institute of National Defense, IDN, in Lisbon. His work explores the intersection of technology, security, and societal change, with a focus on emerging security technologies. Bruno co-leads PRIO's Security and Technology Research Group and is associate also editor of Security Dialogue. Bruno is also a member of the UN Global Network of Experts on the Protection of Vulnerable Targets and has advised the EU on the regulation of the drones and defense technologies. So thank you both for being here and yeah, providing us with this web conference. So before we start, so disaster resilience, as you can see, is part of the security research in the EU, security politics. So we had the web conference regarding cybersecurity, disaster and society, fighting crime and terrorism, and yeah, today there will be border management. And yeah, just to tell you also a little bit about the Transcend project, which we started. So 3 years ago, Transcend is about involving citizens and civil society organizations in security technologies. And by involving them, so in this security technologies, we created a toolbox. It is a handbook actually of methodologies to better have their how we can say it, had their opinions, and so that yeah, citizens and civil societies can give their voice in the use and the choice of security technologies. And in order so to do this project, we applied it through four pilots that are these four pilot domains, and it can also be applied in other topics, thematic that you have in your organization or in your cities, region, whatever it is. So without further ado, so I will let the floor to Bruno to tell you about how they implemented the border management pilot at PRIO. The floor is yours.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Bamba. No, indeed, as Bamba was just explaining, the idea of the project was to first develop the toolbox and then test the toolbox through different pilot studies. And there were 4 of them, and the border management pilot was the last one. It's a pilot that started in September 2024, and rather than concentrating our activities, or rather than looking at the pilot as one event or just 2 events, we decided to conduct a number of different activities so that we could understand positions and how civil society organizations look at the issue of border management, how they feel, or whether or not they feel that they can participate or they have a voice in the processes by which security technologies for border control are developed, procured, and deployed. So basically, as I will go through in the next couple of slides, we conducted a number of activities, precisely trying to understand what are the problems constraining civil society organizations to have a wider and louder voice in these processes, and try to come up with solutions for these processes in a way. Next slide, please, Bamba. Yes, so basically we employ different research strategies, generating inputs, aiming at improving the Transcend toolbox. So for the ones of you that are not totally familiarized with the process within the projects, the idea was to kind of to have different versions of the toolbox that was going to be improved as the pilots unfolded. So the idea was collect information from the pilots that will then make it into the toolbox. And so we've been conducting a number of activities, over the last months. You can see some of those results in the number of different deliverables from the project, including the policy brief that I will tell you a little bit more about. And of course, these discussions, they are not just about how to empower civil society organizations, not just about how to better develop security technologies in a responsible way, but actually they open wider discussions about participatory design, responsible research and innovation, open science, etc. So basically, some of the issues that we discuss in our pilot and in the project in general, they relate to bigger discussions that take place in the sociology of research in Europe in the field of security technologies. Next slide, please, Mamba. Yeah, so the first number of activities, or the first set of activities that we've conducted, we called it consultations with civil society organizations. So for us, it was very important that we actively tried to reach out to civil society organizations to hear their voices. Okay. We also, throughout the project, we also realized that it was not enough to say, we are here, we are willing to listen, please come forward. So this is not enough. And therefore, if we really want to hear the voices of civil society organizations, we really need to make the moves ourselves. We need to kind of to send invitation, we need to reach out. And that's what we have been doing, since September. We have here a number of organizations. We've talked with many others, but very briefly, here in this list, we have civil society organizations from Spain, from Norway, from Portugal, from Pakistan, from properly international, and so we believe that we got a very interesting and to some extent representative explanation of the issues that civil society organizations are confronted with in the field of border management. Next slide, please. It's also important to say, it's previous one, yeah, important to say that we wanted to hear from the civil society organizations from the beginning so that we could design our events in a way that was both more efficient and more targeting the needs of the civil society organizations. And so we what we learned from them was very important to shape the way that the two meetings that we had were organized. The first one, and the most important one in the sense that the one that gathered more people, was a workshop that we hosted at the PRIO, Peace Research Institute Oslo in Norway, in April, where we had many Norway-based civil society organizations, researchers, students, but also a delegation of Greek stakeholders from civil society and governments that were working on border management affairs. And later in this presentation, I will spend more time talking about the ideas that we had for the workshop and how the workshop unfolded. Next slide, please. Then the last setup, the last event was a meeting with civil society organizations in Lisbon. And this was organized together, by PRIO and the Human Rights Platform in Portugal. Um, and we looked at very specific issues when it comes to border management, refugee protection, etc., and civil participation. So this workshop was different from the first. Was a smaller group of people, but all of them actively working on issues of border management. Um, it's also important to say, and the reason why we held workshops in Oslo and in Lisbon is that, and this is perhaps one important finding, is that, for example, in the issue of border management, the border management experience is very different according to the context. Okay, so in our workshop in Oslo, we had people from Greece and people from Norway, and the border management issues that CSOs and practitioners are confronted with are fundamentally different. Okay, and this is something that was further reinforced by organizing a workshop in Lisbon, where the issues under discussion were again different from the previous two. So this is perhaps a finding to bear in mind. There is a contextual logic to the issues that need to be discussed, and some of the problems that civil society organizations are confronted with change according to the context. Okay, next slide, please. And then finally, we also have other sorts of discussions with other stakeholders. So in our pilot, we have mostly engaged with civil society organizations. We thought that this was something that was really important for the project. So the Transcend project in general really wants to put civil society organizations at the center. And so we thought that we that was the most important thing to do in our pilot. But of course, that doesn't mean that we didn't speak with other people. And speaking with researchers working in EU projects, practitioners from EU agencies, EU LISA, for example, a person that works at Frontex, social science researchers in migration and border studies. All of this was important for us to give a wider picture of all the matters that relate to border management. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we had this workshop at PRIO in Oslo that had the objectives of understanding what was the role of civil society in border management. We wanted to fine-tune strategies for further CSO involvement. We wanted to share experiences, or we wanted participants to share their own experiences. And then we also wanted to do networking, okay, to engage people, to put people speaking together, people that haven't met before. Then this was an opportunity for that. Next slide, please. And I will now relatively quickly go through the program, but just to explain what we had in mind. So first, in this first part of the program, after the introductions, we had some group work. So kind of we mixed people from different backgrounds, different professional and academic backgrounds, around the table and in different groups to discuss the broader role of civil society when it comes to border management. So at this part of the workshop, we were not talking necessarily just about border management technologies, but rather how civil society can participate in border issues regarding border management. Next slide, please. The second one was something that I think worked out pretty well, and it's perhaps something interesting to keep in mind for researchers organizing this type of events. So basically, we did a case study research and we did some role play. Okay, and what we wanted to use as case study was facial recognition technologies that are used for border management. Okay, and first what we had is that we had a specialist from one civil society organization that basically presented the issue. Okay, so basically so that we could all be more or less on the same page. And then we conducted a role play with the idea of highlighting the fact that the possibilities for civil society organizations to interfere in processes that lead to the adoption of security technologies is very different according to the stage where we are. So the strategies for a civil society organization to impact the research and development stage of a new technology, so kind of that possibility is very different from the possibility of impacting the procurement stage or the deployment stage. Okay, and so it's not, if we want to develop strategies and to help civil society organizations think through how they can influence these processes, it's very important to be aware that depending on where in the innovation and adoption cycle we are, the the strategies and the techniques will also be different. Okay, and this was very important, and it was a very important finding, and it was something that resulted quite explicit after we have done the role play. If we had not done the role play, probably this would not have been so clear for the people in the room. Next slide, please. And then basically in the last part, for us, it was important to have some time to reflect on what we had learned and how to move forward. And then we concluded by giving or freeing up space for people just to continue to be in the room and just to network informally. This is something very important. Yeah. So basically, the key discussion points that result of out of our pilot, and this is our slide before the last, is that the constraints, that there are a number of constraints for civil society organization participation in the processes by which security technologies are developed and employed. So the first are the high levels of technical expertise that is required. So these technological systems that are employed today for border management are increasingly complex, and it's very difficult to monitor them. And this is related to the second constraint, which has to do with the lack of resources. Most civil society organizations struggle with getting the resources that they need. Two other important constraints are the fact that CSOs are often profiled as non-cooperative. So kind of when speaking with security practitioners, this idea resulted quite explicit. Okay, I'm not saying that it is correct. I don't think it is correct. I'm just saying that this is an idea that exists for some people. But then the fourth one, from the perspective of CSOs, sometimes there are reputation costs in participating in these kind of processes. So the second discussion point has to do with these different strategies for influence and how they differ according to the development stage we are, development, procurement, or deployment phase. And then very important issue has to do with the importance of CSOs for these processes and how important it is that they are included. They bring increasing legitimacy to the processes. They contribute to widening the agendas and the discussion, and then they can lead to out-of-the-box thinking. So these are really key findings of the pilots. Next slide, please. And so basically we have this, most of these ideas are summarized in the policy brief that was published just a few weeks ago, that was co-authored by myself and Samar Abbas Nawaz, who is my colleague at PRIO. The policy brief is free to download from Transcend's websites. And yeah, so this is what we had prepared. Now I will pass on the ball to Mark, and I will be happy to answer some questions afterwards. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bruno. Mark, just a minute. I'm switching the presentation and we can take it back there.
I think I can also take control, right, or not?
Yes, I will give it to you also. I'm getting there.
I can do it myself, I guess. This is the, oh no.
I'm just switching the presentation since that wasn't the right one there. Okay, you can go, Mark. Do you have any questions so far, though, gents? Okay.
Yeah, it is a bit silly. I need to click through them.
Yeah,
Here it is. You're now seeing a sheet with, on the left-hand side, the handbook that is available for download on the project website. The URL will be given at the end of the presentation. And I will talk you through a bit of the what is in that handbook. First, I will speak a little bit on the benefits and challenges of collaborating with citizens in innovation. Then stress the need to organize a process, and this is in contrast to like a one-off workshop. A one-off workshop is better than no workshop, but to organize a process of collaboration with a series of workshops is even better. I'll talk about what types of organizations can be involved in the collaboration. You've already seen lots of those examples by Bruno, of course. And I'll say a bit more on certain methods. First, maybe as a thought experiment, the motivation, the background, why would you want to involve citizens in your research project, in your innovation project, and want to collaborate with them? And either in your head, or if you have time and a keyboard available, maybe also in the chat, can you think of potential benefits of collaborating with citizens? And also, if you imagine collaborating with them, what could be challenges that you can encounter during such a collaboration? Now, I will keep an eye on the chat, or Bruno can maybe do that. Meanwhile, I will also say a bit on what is known in literature on this, and also in our own experience in this project. On the left-hand side are a couple of benefits, potential benefits. Collaborating with citizens can help you to promote an outside-in orientation. You can better understand the concerns and needs of ordinary people's problems, ordinary people's lives. Secondly, if you start with an understanding of people's problems, then of course the problem setting is much clearer, and it can also help you to better direct the ways and the directions in which you look for solutions. Overall, it can help you for a better and faster decision making in your project. Thirdly, those organizations that are involved in the collaboration, they can then better align their projects and their efforts to the concerns and needs in society. On the right-hand side are some costs and challenges. Organizing anything, workshops for citizens, for example, of course, costs time, budget, and expertise. Now, the good news is, of course, that when you use appropriate methods, you can still work efficiently and effectively. So yes, it costs a bit of budget, time, and expertise, but you can do it. The complexity and expectations elements point to you're inviting new and extra viewpoints to the table. And that also involves extra efforts of managing expectations. What can you do? What can you not do with the results from those interactions? And we believe, and we also found in practice, that you can do this with, say, normal project management and relation management approaches. Now, here's an example of what I was already mentioning a couple of times. The gray arrow represents a flow, a process, a larger collaboration. And then the red circles are the workshops that Bruno talked about. And this is an example. There are many more examples because we did many more pilots in the Transcend projects. But how one workshop feeds into the next one, builds upon the next one, and how you can work with different groups of participants and different questions. Those are in the purple diamond shapes on the bottom side of the figure. Different people to talk about different topics, and then you can build one workshop on top of the other one. Ideally, such a collaboration, such a process starts with clear purpose and objectives. Now, obviously, when you meet for the first time, those purpose and objectives are not clear yet, but this is precisely through a couple of meetings, negotiations, communications that you can start to clarify, and then hopefully you will have a clear and shared purpose and objectives. For collaboration with relevant stakeholders, and then to plan and execute those interactions and meetings. And importantly, during implementation, evaluation, you can learn and improve the way that you organize these collaborations and workshops. This is a drawing that helps to think of potential types of organizations that you would want to collaborate with. You don't need all of them all the time, but this is like a menu to pick from. Sometimes it will be great to have a government involved, a national one, local one. They can help you possibly with funding, or they can help you with a democratic mandate, that what you find in those workshops has some democratic legitimacy behind it. Secondly, if your project involves technology, development or deployment of technology, it can be handy to involve experts from the industry. From their perspective, from the industry's perspective, such collaboration with citizens or with NGOs or CSOs can help them to better align with citizens' needs and values. Thirdly, it can be very beneficial to collaborate with those professionals on the ground, in the field, who work in safety and security. They can be police officers, firefighters, border control personnel in this case, of course. They can tell you lots of practical things of what will work and what will not work in practice. The green one we've discussed, of course, about. Last one on the bottom, knowledge institutes. It can be handy to involve experts for specific technology, for specific expertise, say on ethics or human rights or societal aspects. Now, I will only briefly mention some of the methods that are in the toolbox, because, of course, details you can find out for yourselves. A citizen summit is like a parliament, an ad hoc parliament, a mini public of citizens that you invite to, say, a town hall or other large place, have a deliberation, have a process of discussion, problem solution, all those topics. And also you can add voting to that, which is a nice feature. Secondly, World Cafe. It looks like a bunch of tables in a larger room, and around each table 3 or 4 or 5 people, and then they rotate also from table to table so that they can continue the work of the previous group. It's a way to explore diversity and creativity because participants build upon the previous people at that table as they rotate from table to table. A deliberative workshop, there you can dive deeper into a complex or a sensitive or controversial topic. A focus group, it's maybe a rather generic term, but still very useful. get a group of people around the room, around the table in a room, to talk about their experiences and ideas concerning a specific topic. That's why it's called a focus group. You can do a perspective workshop that is can be helpful for discussing and evaluating specific technology or application. Participatory design and co-design, all of this is in a way participatory design, co-design, but this draws attention specifically to those workshop formats where participants, citizens, are invited to participate actively and creatively to the design development process. One more slide, a bit more specific methods, maybe not always applicable, but still maybe useful. Neo-Socratic dialogue, you dive very deep into the underlying values and assumptions. Focus group, I've already mentioned. Interview, the third one. If your topic is very personal, very sensitive, or you deal with vulnerable groups, it can be better to not organize a focus group, but to interview one or two people at a time so they can feel more safe and dive into those personal or sensitive topics. Last one, participatory strategic planning. There, the citizens, the people that you involve, can also have a say not only about the product that you're working on, but also to help the planning of the project. It goes a bit further than normal participation in that sense. This is an overview of the methods that we mentioned. So the methods are in columns, and in the rows you see like how much time does it require, how difficult is it to facilitate. So this can help you to navigate and orient like what would be a great method for this project that I'm working in. A bit of theory, but I'll be very brief. All of these methods can be plotted in this 2x2, 9-cell matrix. It's always about experts and professionals on the one hand, and citizens or CSOs on the other hand, bring them together to work in a third space. It's often always also about moving from problem setting, do we understand the current situation, to solution finding, exploring possible solutions, and then action, making things happen. That's the green arrow from top to bottom. And here's another way to visualize a flow, a buildup of workshops. Start with the green one. Citizens talk about their problem. You move to the orange one. You explore and develop possible solutions. Yellow one on the bottom, where it moves to implementation and deployment. One of the first slides was about the different domains that Transcend had worked on. On the left is an example that we did in Austria with Red Cross Austria, where citizens were invited to work as co-creators to help evaluate and improve a mobile app. The blue one is work in Mechelen, where youth were in a youth center together with youth workers. They were invited to act as in a role of research partners, talk about their experiences and needs, like independent almost of technology. The purple one was a couple of workshops in cybersecurity, maybe a complex topic, so that was more like a conversation that we hosted. We gave them some information, they gave us some feedback, so we learned from each other. And the orange one on the right-hand side was what you have just listened to, not so much talking with citizens, but more with CSOs and NGOs who can talk on behalf of citizens. This, I guess, is a bridge to a Q&A. If you imagine your workplace, your projects, your organization, could you think of using any of such methods to collaborate with CSOs? Bamba, maybe you can help facilitate.
Some question like if you are to open the debate here, if you can think about any other methods to collaborate that you are using that outside of the handbook, or challenges also you can encounter organizing collaboration with society or organization, and also it's just you are not also never worked with civil society organization and you are not used to it. Also, you can tell us if you want to exchange with that. And you can write in the chat or tell us. Or think about it also. I mean, have it as a takeaway for for you. Okay. Any other question also which are not related to this that you wanna talk about, or some have questions about the organization of the pilot to Bruno and how to also use the handbook to mark? Okay, yeah, Gabriela, please.
Hi. Just to kick off the conversations, I think some people are shy. They probably have loads of questions, but they don't dare to ask. My question goes to Bruno, if I may. You're talking about some of the potential advantages of having CSOs involved in the conversations about border technologies, and you were talking about one of the advantages as being coming up with out-of-the-box solutions. Would it be possible for you to elaborate on that a little bit? Thank you.
Yeah, so the idea here is always that the more participant, it's the idea of representativity and why diversity is important, because the more you open up the conversation, the more likely it will be that you have different solutions. So if you just, for example, in the issue of border technologies, if the main stakeholders are, for example, security professionals, police, border agents, etc., and the industry, the framing of the issue will lead to one type of solution to the problem. So kind of it's really the way that you frame the problem impacts on the solution that you come up for that problem. And if you only have, a limited number of groups of stakeholders involved, it is more likely that you just stay within the same ways of thinking. But if you open up to civil society organizations that have, often fundamentally different concerns, okay, that do not derogate the other ones, but just, adds and widen up, I think it's more likely that different solutions will come. So kind of just think differently about one particular issue. And when it comes to border management, I think this is really one of the issues where this comes across as, quite evident, because security professionals tend to look at issues relating border management as a security issue. Okay, so if we don't know enough, if we are not in control, then this may lead to situations of insecurity, and then it's more difficult for them to deal with the unknown, etc. And so if they only speak with the industry providers and industry developers, the solutions that they would get, they would basically will be in the sense of looking at border management issues as border security issues. Whereas if you involve civil society organizations, and of course here it really depends what type of civil society organizations, because civil society organizations, they basically represent one particular interest or one particular segment of the population. It is much more likely that the issues that they work on or that they work with get elevated and become a part of whatever solution is developed in the future. So it's basically about, opening up ways of thinking, involving more people, raising up different types of concerns, and this will lead to kind of two different ways of thinking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another comment, question? Okay, so yeah, as Mark already showed you, also you can download handbook for free on the website, and still on it's a draft pending, but yeah, they are waiting for the commission to validate it. But yeah, you can have your copy of the handbook on the Transcend project website. And I'm also announcing you the next event that we have, which will be the final event of the Transcend project. That will be September 10th, 2025 in Brussels. I missed the S there. So yeah, you can have more info on the Abbas website, on the Transcend project website. And if you need more information, additional insight, do not hesitate to reach out to Bruno or to Mark. I think they will be happy to chat and discuss. And if ever also you are interested about the Transcend final event, let us know, please. And we can arrange your participation somehow if you are interested in it. If you don't have any other question, thank you very much for this last web conference, and we'll see you later, and we will share it. So the recording of this web conference on the Transcend project, and you can share it within your network, or have also a look at the 4 policy brief that we did in each domain. And yes, we'll be happy to answer any other question you might have. Thank you very much, and wish you a nice afternoon and a nice end of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks for organizing. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.